Hello guys, today we start with direct tax of your semester 4 for SYBAF. Previous semester में we have done direct tax subject and you all have got the basics of direct tax, and as I told you what you have in your syllabus is income tax. Earlier long back in direct tax there was wealth tax also, but that wealth tax is scrapped from practical life also, so it is out of the syllabus. So we study direct tax in this semester, that is semester 4 again. Next year, sorry, in your TY, both the semesters may you will be having indirect taxation that I had mentioned in the previous semester when I started with direct tax. Now, just to brush up in a minute, what is direct tax? Direct tax is a tax which is paid by a person directly to the government. You all have income tax in your syllabus. A person earns income. On that income, whatever is the tax payable, one beautiful thing for this semester is, not in this chapter what I am starting today, after a few chapters you will study how to calculate income tax on the taxable income. So that is a beautiful thing what you all are going to study, and fortunately for you all BAF students, this is not in the syllabus of BCom as well as BAF. So as far as undergrad level is concerned, you all are very lucky to study this, because this is a very much practical oriented chapter, and the taxation calculation is a very important part, not only from your syllabus point of view but also from practical life point of view. So direct tax, you have income tax, the tax which you pay on the income directly to the government, that is direct tax. Okay, now guys, briefing you about the syllabus in this semester. In this semester, as per the official index prescribed by the university, there are total 8 chapters. As per the prescribed syllabus of Mumbai University, there are total 8 chapters. Now you can count it as 10 also. Why? Because later on there is one chapter, abhi wo kaun sa chapter, I am not getting into that. It's divided in 3 parts. So even if you count it as 3 small chapters, it is 10 chapters. Otherwise you count it as 8, and one chapter divided in 3 parts. Now good thing is that it's very interesting. You will have the basic base of income tax. So now those who have liked tax in the previous semester, I can 110% guarantee you that you will like. And those who are okay, don't worry, understand my explanation carefully. What I explain you will definitely find it very interesting. 30-40% of the base of few chapters is the same, and what you are going to study new, take my words, it is very interesting. I am not praising myself, but it depends upon how this subject, especially of this semester, is taught to you all. If it is taught in a very systematic way, I am not praising myself, I am telling you the fact, then you will thoroughly understand. Of course, it has to be a two-way relationship. Hardly me teaching well doesn't make sense till the time you all are not grasping it, revising and practicing. Okay, so this was direct tax. Now, as I told you, total 8 chapters. You call it as official 8 as per your syllabus, or you call it as 10, where I told you one chapter is divided in 3 parts. Whatever you call it, fine. We are going to cover each and every chapter. Now, starting with the first chapter of the syllabus, that is clubbing of income. The first chapter of your syllabus, that is clubbing of income. Now, you all are college students, correct? Clubbing, the word clubbing आता है दिमाग में, disco pub, ये वो नहीं है. Okay, so clubbing of income is the first chapter of the syllabus, and I'll explain you what exactly you mean by this chapter. I'm starting with the explanation. Let me tell you first what is clubbing, then what are the different parts you have, and I'll be starting with the first part in this session. For the first part, at least 2 sessions will go. There are total 7 parts of this chapter clubbing. Very simple. उसमें से 3 parts are same only. I'll tell you step by step what it is. First, let me get into what is clubbing of income. Now listen, as I told you, direct tax. You all have income tax. The tax what you pay on the income earned is income tax. Now you know बहुत साल पहले जब ये क्लबिंग का प्रोविजन इंट्रोड्यूस भी नहीं हुआ था, what होता, you know what used to happen? Say for example, there is Mr. A. Okay, there is Mr. A. He is earning say 4 lakh rupees in a year. I'm just putting a hypothetical. He is earning 4 lakh rupees in a year. Now, what will happen? He will pay tax on 4 lakh. He will pay tax on 4 lakh rupees. Now, for y'all know in your syllabus what you all had done last sem. What you all have is assessment year 23-24, which is previous year 22-23. Okay, you all know this concept. For y'all are supposed to calculate income for the current financial year, which starts on 1st April 22, ends on 31st March 22. You all know income tax may you all have financial year only. And what is assessment year? AY? Assessment year is the year which follows the previous year. Why we call it an assessment year? Because ये साल के income का tax and calculation of income you will be able to do properly only after the year is over. So ये साल का income का assessment. What is assessment you all have done in the previous sem? It is the process adopted by the government or the income tax department to find out whether the income details submitted by you is correct or no, whether the tax payable by you is correct or no, or in case they are supposed to give you a refund, whether it is correct or not. That is assessment. So in your syllabus, all the sums, even for this semester, will be previous year 22-23, that is assessment year 23-24. Now guys, as I told you, you will be having calculation of tax, correct? Now for your batch, the amount of income tax is exempt up to rupees 2,50,000. A basic exemption is exempt up to rupees 2,50,000. That means 2,50,000 tak there is no tax. If you earn an income up to rupees 2,50,000, there is no tax. Now, logically 5 lakh tak bhi tax nahi aayega, because there is some concept called as rebate. When we come to the chapter calculation of income tax, that time we will see. Okay, first 2 chapters are different, that has got nothing to do with your calculation of tax. So right now just assume 2,50,000 tak ke income pe there is no tax. Exact taxable income kitna hai, kitna tax pay karna hai, kya slab hai, that we'll see in this chapter. Right now just understand what I am trying to say. So मैंने क्या बोला, 2,50,000 तक no tax. Now this fellow is having an income of 4 lakh rupees. Now what used to happen now? Oh, ये क्या करेगा? 4 lakh rupees इसका income है. So purposely what he will do? Out of 4 lakh, in his books, he will show, say for example, an income of 2,25,000. और जो बाकी का 175 है ना, he will try to manipulate and take all the incomes in his wife's name, Mrs. A. Understand this? यहाँ पे Mr. A 4 लाख रुपए पे टैक्स भर रहा है. Just giving you an example what clubbing is. Okay, he will pay income tax on 4 lakh. Now what will happen? He, out of 4 lakh, 225 he shows as his income, and बाकी का 175 he shows it in the name of his wife. See, when doing a business, you get check in your name, correct? So instead of taking the check in his name, he takes it in the name of wife. So wife का income हो गया. Now listen, 250 तक no tax per person per SSC. Wife and husband are different SSC. So up to 2,50,000 in a year, there is no income tax. तो ये देखो first case में क्या हुआ? This fellow had to pay tax because 250 के ऊपर है. Now क्या हुआ? A का 225 below 250, Mrs. A का 175 below 250. दोनों का income is below the taxable limit of 2,50,000. दोनों का income is below the taxable limit of 2,50,000. Therefore, neither Mr. A nor Mrs. A will pay income tax, because income tax कभी आएगा? Only when the income of both of them goes above 2,50,000. 250 तक कोई income tax नहीं. As I told you, 5 लाख तक भी कोई income tax नहीं आएगा. There is a concept called as rebate. Right now, don't get into that. Right now, just understand what I am trying to say. Got it? So, what happened? ये क्या किया? ये क्यों टैक्स नहीं आया दोनों को? बिकॉज मिस्टर ए ने अपने 4 लाख में से 175 मिसेस ए को ट्रांसफर किया. ए ने अपने 4 लाख के इनकम में से 175 अपनी वाइफ मिसेस ए को ट्रांसफर किया. इसके लिए ये इनकम पे टैक्स नहीं लगा. सो कीप दिस एज अ स्ट्रॉन्ग एग्जाम्पल. To avoid all these things, the concept of clubbing of income was introduced. To avoid all this, the concept of clubbing of income was introduced. So, clubbing of income में क्या होगा? अगर तुम income tax में पकड़े गए, there are ways, पकड़े गए, then what will income? अगर income tax वाले को ये पता चल गया, वो लोग क्या बोलेंगे? बॉस, you have manipulated. We will take Mrs. A का income as 0 और ये 175 तुम्हारे में ऐड कर देंगे. So now your income is 4 lakh rupees, back to 4 lakh. Tax baro. Don't try to act smart against us. That will be the verdict of income tax people if you are caught. So clubbing मतलब क्या? Understand. To avoid this, situations will come where one particular person ka income is transferred to somebody else. So income tax people have laid down the provisions. We will study all of that, where you may not earn an income, but किसी और का, maybe your wife or husband, spouse, or your children, major children, minor children का तो होएगा, आगे जाके provision आएगा, और some third person का income will be taxed. So clubbing मतलब क्लब करना. तुम्हारे में किसी और का income क्लब हो सकता है अगर you are a part of that provisions, the rules apply to you, or you have made some transfer directly or indirectly. वो क्या होता है? We'll see in some time. Or you have got some income which doesn't belong to you. Somebody else has transferred to you so that he can save tax. तो तुम्हारे इनकम में से तुम्हारा इनकम उसमें ऐड हो जाएगा. That is clubbing. So in short, clubbing is taxing income of some other person to you, or your income is taxed to some other person. In both the cases, the motive is to evade tax. वो नहीं चलेगा. That is clubbing of income. Clear? That is clubbing of income. See, I have made maximum sums for you. Okay, see the first page. अभी एक काम करना, ज़्यादा स्ट्रेस लेने का जरूरत नहीं है. जो फर्स्ट पेज पे इंट्रोडक्शन है ना, जस्ट रफली ग्लांस थ्रू दैट. जो मैंने बोला था वही एग्जाम्पल इनडायरेक्टली किया. एंड जो इलस्ट्रेशन है मिस्टर अश्विन का, देयर इज कैलकुलेशन ऑफ टैक्स. फॉरगेट दैट. डोंट ट्राई टू कैलकुलेट द टैक्स. Just understand, यही सेम सिमिलर एग्जाम्पल इज गिवन. डोंट ट्राई टू कैलकुलेट द टैक्स. ओके, वो रफली ग्लांस कर देना. इंट्रोडक्शन में जो मैंने तुम्हें एक्सप्लेन किया वही किया हुआ है. Even if you don't read from here and you can remember what I have explained, write it in your own words, no issues. Yeah. Now see, below the table they have given you incomes to be clubbed. क्या बोला मैंने? There are 7 incomes. Now all 7 are in your syllabus, but जो 7 है ना, उसमें से 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 of them. 4 of them are exactly same. 4 of them are exactly same. So the first, remuneration of spouse, important point. Then assets gifted to spouse, important point. उसके बाद के next 3 similar provisions to assets gifted to spouse. Then you have minor child, which is again very interesting and very commonly asked question. And the last wala, conversion of own property into HUF. Maximum times sums have come earlier in remuneration, the first part what I am going to start, and minor. Of course, बाकी parts भी आए, but इससे ज़्यादा. Now, as I told you earlier in the previous semester also, this subject direct tax, before GST was introduced in 2017-18, उसके पहले direct tax since BAF started, it was always a subject of SYBAF. Therefore, it was a board exam. Now you all know it has been shifted to SY. So autonomous students तो तुम्हारा college का exam ही है, but non-autonomous students, you will have it in SY, which is your college exam. Got it? So now, starting with the first part of clubbing, that is remuneration of spouse. Remuneration of spouse. Now listen guys, first page पे देखो, remuneration of spouse. Now they have given you brackets में section 64, that is 1-3, correct? Sorry, 1-2, 64, 1-2. Now see, to be honest, in your undergrad level, you are not that much expected to remember the section and subsection, but हो सके तो याद रखना, otherwise at least try to remember section 64. So you will make out from the question only once I start. So wherever the sum is based on remuneration of spouse, section 64, 1, so main section 64, subsection 1-2, that you will have to remember. देखो वहाँ पे दिया हुआ है, heading देखो first page पे, remuneration of spouse 64, 1, brackets में small Roman. Got it guys? Now, the remaining part of this session and the next session, and I don't know if I am able to complete in the next session, it's fine. Otherwise, 2 to 3 videos will be based only on the first part, that is remuneration of spouse. And guys, one good thing what I have done now, ये जो मैंने बनाया notes पूरा solve किया हुआ है, questions के नीचे answers दिए, so I have to discuss and wherever required I have to show you the calculation. ये chapter में तुम्हें कुछ practically solve नहीं करना है, except for 2-3 sub where it is little bit presentation. So that is one very good thing. And in exam, don't worry, you have to write the conclusions, you have to write the answers in your own words. Of course, मैं explain करूँगा कैसे करना है. So don't bother much. ये chapter में there is no solving of full-fledged sum. You have to just give the conclusion, but you should be aware, thorough with the provisions. And the provisions are very, very interesting. Okay guys, sure. Let's start first. Remuneration to spouse. Remuneration to spouse. Now see, when I say remuneration means what? It is nothing but an alternate word for salary or commission or bonus. Okay. You all have done na? Sem 5 mein income from salary, the first taxable head of direct tax. So वहाँ पे we had done definition of salary. Salary means salary commission, bonus or similar other income which is related to this. Now the question is, remuneration spouse को करना क्या है sir? Clubbing क्यों? So I gave you this example. Now listen very carefully. Again I'll take the same name. Mr. A, उसकी wife Mrs. A. Husband, wife. Husband के लिए wife spouse, wife के लिए husband spouse. Spouse मतलब husband के लिए wife, wife के लिए husband. Now when I say remuneration, salary, commission, bonus, you all know ना, salary, commission, bonus कभी आएगा? Salary, bonus कभी आएगा? When you are working with a company, when you are an employee with a particular company or an organization, that time only you get salary. Now listen, what the provision says. I'll explain you all the provisions and then you all will read it. मैंने अगर जो भी तुमको explain किया दिमाग में बैठ गया, you just have to glance. And one good thing again for this chapter is, apart from the sums, your जो theory part है तुम्हारा questions 15 mark का long answers से मतलब divided into 7 and 8 mark और 5 marks का short note, challenging you 2 to 3 will come from this chapter. दो तो normal trend है, that was during PY also when this chapter was in boards and even SY. Two questions 8 to 10 marks तो minimum तुमको आएगा ही आएगा from this, maybe more. Okay, now listen. Mr. A, Mrs. A. Mr. A or Mrs. A, anyone is working in some company where the spouse is involved. Let's say Mr. A is having shares in X Limited. Okay, Mr. A is having shares in X Limited and Mrs. A, understand, is working in X Limited. Mr. A is having shares in X Limited. Why shares? That is substantial interest. I am coming in the flow. And Mrs. A is working in X Limited. Now listen. Understand. In few cases, so if she is working, definitely Mrs. A is getting salary. Mrs. A is getting salary from X Limited. Okay, Mrs. A is getting salary from X Limited. Now, clubbing में मैंने क्या बोला? Mrs. A का salary will be clubbed to Mr. A. I am making it very simple for you. Mrs. A का salary will be clubbed to Mr. A. That means Mrs. A का जो भी salary है वो Mr. A के इनकम में ऐड हो सकता है, होएगा नहीं, हो भी सकता है, नहीं भी हो सकता है. So now the question is when. Now listen very carefully. If Mrs. A is getting salary from a technical or a professional qualification, understand this, from a technical or professional qualification where she is getting the salary out of her own hard work and her qualification, then provisions of clubbing will not apply. अगर Mrs. A अपने qualification के मुताबिक काम कर रही है and she is getting salary as per her qualification and hard work, then clubbing provision will not apply. Now say for example, Mrs. A is a CA or she is a commerce accounts graduate. She is doing an account job or she is doing employee in the taxation department, then clubbing provisions will not apply. If Mrs. A is an engineer and she is working in a construction company as under the in a team of engineers, clubbing provision will not apply. She is an architect, she is working with a builder or construction company, provisions of clubbing will not apply. Clubbing provision will apply when Mrs. A is doing a job where she doesn't have a technical or professional qualification according to the job what is given. Now see, you all will find it very strange, but it is a fact. Income Tax Act doesn't define technical or professional qualification. In absence of information, what it says that the qualification should be such that it should suit your work. You are working in that way. Now say, if you are a commerce graduate and you are working as an engineer in the engineer department, सेंस नहीं बनता है, क्लबिंग अप्लाई होगा. You have an engineering का qualification. You are a science graduate. You are working in accounts department. सेंस नहीं बनता है. So in this case, where you are doing a job which has got nothing to do with your qualification, or you don't have a qualification at all, in that case, remuneration will be clubbed in the hands of spouse. Spouse मतलब husband का रहेगा तो wife में, wife का रहेगा तो husband. Got it? This is the thing. But उसमें भी there are conditions. ये जो case है, now I told you, shares in X Limited. Now ये case में, let's take an example. Mrs. A is not having technical qualification. तो ये क्लब होगा, लेकिन एक मेन कंडीशन क्या है? ये क्लब कभी होगा when Mr. A का substantial interest in X Limited is more than 20%. That means whatever are the number of shares issued by X Limited, if Mr. A is holding more than 20%, then only clubbing provision will apply. Suppose X Limited ने total 1 lakh shares issue किए, 1 lakh shares में से more than 20,000 are held by Mr. A, then only clubbing provision will apply. If A holds 25,000, 22,000, 30,000 or anything more, then in that case clubbing provision will apply. But say for example, if A holds 10% or 8% or 1%, less than 20%, even 18%, 19%, then in that case, even if Mrs. A doesn't have a professional qualification, it cannot be clubbed. Mrs. A के income पे Mrs. A टैक्स भरेगी, वो Mr. A में क्लब नहीं हो सकता, because there is no substantial interest. Substantial interest means spouse का interest in the firm or the company where the other spouse is working, वहाँ पे more than 20% interest होना चाहिए. Getting it? So I'll repeat again. If Mr. A is working with X Limited, Mrs. A doesn't have a professional or technical qualification, then it will be clubbed in the hands of Mr. A, provided his substantial interest is 20% plus. 20% से कम shares है Mr. A के पास, then it cannot be clubbed even if she doesn't have any professional qualification. Got it? So 20% substantial interest is very important. Now listen, ये मैंने example दिया X Limited. Now say for example there is a partnership firm, Mrs. ABC, 3 partners है. वो पार्टनरशिप फर्म में मिसेस ए जॉब कर रही है और उसको सैलरी मिलता है. अंडरस्टैंड दिस. ये मैंने कंपनी का एग्जांपल दिया. मिस्टर ए इज अ पार्टनर इन ABC एंड कंपनी. 3 पार्टनर्स, प्रॉफिट इज डिवाइडेड इक्वली अमंग ऑल द 3. सो 100 डिवाइड बाय 3 कितना हुआ? 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. नाउ व्हेन आई से 1/3, इफ यू डू इन द कैलसी, 100 डिवाइड बाय 3 gives you 33 1/3%. So in that case, partnership firm cannot issue shares, correct? Partnership firm cannot issue shares. So what will happen? The substantial interest will be judged from the percentage of profit sharing. Percentage of profit sharing में से substantial interest judge होगा. That means if Mr. A is a partner in ABC and company or any firm where Mrs. A is working, अगर इसका प्रॉफिट शेयरिंग रेशियो more than 20% है, then it comes under the definition of substantial interest. अगर इसका profit sharing ratio 20% के ऊपर है, so it comes under the definition of substantial interest. It comes under the definition of substantial interest. Got it, guys? So that is the point of substantial interest. Got it? रुको, खत्म नहीं हुआ है. Understand? मैं पूरा theory तुमको brief कर रहा हूँ. Got it? This was one point. Now, listen very carefully. Mr. A and Mrs. A, husband, wife, you all are 21st generation kids. तुम लोगों को पता है ना, शादी के बाद डिवोर्स कितना कॉमन हो गया है. 50% ऑफ द केसेस में डिवोर्स होता है. सो नाउ लिसन वेरी केयरफुली. Mrs. A, in this example, when she gets the salary, even if the income is clubbed, even if the income is to be clubbed, it can be clubbed only when the date when you get that income, the date when you get that income, relationship of spouse should exist. Spouse क्या होता है? Husband के लिए wife, wife के लिए husband. Relationship of spouse has to exist. Say for example, say this is the month, let's say January, बराबर? I'm taking January 24. Let's take the month as January 24. Mrs. A को January 24 का salary मिला. She doesn't have any professional qualification. Mr. A holds more than 20% shares. So substantial interest हुआ. लेकिन अगर 31st दिसंबर को ये दोनों का डिवोर्स हो गया, ऑफिशियल डिवोर्स हुआ, जनवरी 24 में जो भी इनकम आएगा इट कैन नॉट बी क्लब, बिकॉज जनवरी 24 में दोनों का हस्बैंड वाइफ का रिलेशनशिप नहीं था. जनवरी 24 में हस्बैंड वाइफ का रिलेशनशिप नहीं था. सो फॉर इनकम्स टू बी क्लब्ड, another criteria is the relationship of husband and wife should be existing on the date of accrual of income. जो मंथ का, जो साल का इनकम है, during that period relationship of husband wife should be existing. शादी होना चाहिए, legal marriage should exist. Listen, if they are not married, खाली एंगेजमेंट हुआ है, क्लबिंग प्रोविजंस कैन नॉट अप्लाई. इफ दे आर मैरिड देन ओनली इट विल अप्लाई. एंगेजमेंट हुआ है, क्लबिंग प्रोविजंस कैन नॉट अप्लाई. गर्लफ्रेंड बॉयफ्रेंड है, पेरेंट्स ने दोनों को एक्सेप्ट किया है, लेकिन अभी तक शादी नहीं हुई है, दिस इज द सिचुएशन, क्लबिंग प्रोविजन विल नॉट अप्लाई. यू आर स्टेइंग इन अ लिविंग रिलेशनशिप, क्लबिंग प्रोविजन विल नॉट अप्लाई बिकॉज living relationship is open, but it is not treated as a legal marriage. So relationship of husband and wife has to be existing on the date of accrual of income. Engagement, no clubbing. Girlfriend boyfriend, no clubbing. Living relationship, no clubbing. Divorce, no clubbing. Husband wife का relationship should be existing. Husband and wife का relationship should be existing. Got it, guys? This is another criteria. So remuneration received by the spouse directly or indirectly, मतलब salary, commission, in some for the other. Even if you don't get it by in the form of money, you get it in the form of some gift, non-cash, then also it is treated as a consideration, and that amount of the value of gift, even if you don't get in the form of money, will be clubbed here. Okay, so keep this point in mind. Abhi dekho, just see that 1A, first point, A मतलब A remuneration account. First point I discussed with you. Second point, technical professional qualification. Third, whose remuneration is to be clubbed. I showed you right now, as an example, they are divorce, live-in relationship. Okay. Now see fourth, how remuneration is to be clubbed. As I told you, this way, husband का either wife में और wife का husband में. Now listen, now listen. Suppose Mr. A and Mrs. A, understand? Mr. A and Mrs. A both are working in a firm where there is substantial interest. Mr. A और Mrs. A एक फर्म पार्टनरशिप फर्म में काम कर रहे हैं. मिस्टर ए और मिसेज ए एक पार्टनरशिप फर्म में काम कर रहे हैं. दोनों में से किसी के पास भी प्रोफेशनल क्वालिफिकेशन नहीं है. दोनों में से किसी के पास भी प्रोफेशनल क्वालिफिकेशन नहीं है. बट ए is a partner and even Mrs. A is a partner. Just understand this for example purpose. So now the question is, किसमें merge करूँ? Mr. A का Mrs. A में और Mrs. A का Mr. A. Similar example. Both of them are working in a company. Both of them are working in X Limited. Okay. दोनों के पास 25% substantial interest है. दोनों के पास 25% substantial interest है. So now the question is, Mr. A का Mrs. A में merge होगा या Mrs. A का Mr. A में? See what the provision is. ये क्या है? Remuneration. That means salary. So what will happen in that case? You have to see the other income of both the people other than salary. मतलब ये कंपनी से जो सैलरी मिला उसको साइड पे छोड़ दो. बाकी का जो इनकम है, दैट मीन्स व्हाट, हाउस प्रॉपर्टी है, बिजनेस प्रोफेशन इफ एनी, अदर सोर्स कैपिटल गेन. सी द अदर इनकम. The income what you are getting, both of them are getting salary from this company. दोनों का सैलरी साइड पे रख दो. दूसरी इनकम दोनों की कैलकुलेट करो. अगर मिस्टर ए की अदर इनकम इज मोर देन मिसेज ए का सैलरी विल बी क्लब टू मिस्टर ए. इफ मिसेज ए की सैलरी छोड़ के बाकी सब इनकम इज मोर देन ए, देन अकॉर्डिंगली दैट क्लब. सो वेयर द सिचुएशन इज सच, हस्बैंड वाइफ दोनों का क्लबिंग एप्लीकेबल है. तो द क्वेश्चन इज, हस्बैंड की इनकम वाइफ में क्लब करे या वाइफ की इनकम हस्बैंड में? इन दैट केस अगेन आई रिपीट, सी द अदर इनकम अदर देन द सैलरी फ्रॉम दिस कंपनी एक्स लिमिटेड. और जिसकी इनकम ज्यादा है, सपोज मिस्टर ए की अदर इनकम ज्यादा है तो मिसेस ए की सैलरी मिस्टर ए में क्लब होगी. और अगर मिसेस ए की इनकम ज्यादा है, मिस्टर ए सैलरी विल बी क्लब. Got it? This is that point. Now guys listen. Another point जो next page पे है, I'll explain you. अच्छा, substantial interest मैंने तुम लोग को बताया, बराबर. Now see, 6 point also I have discussed. If application to both spouse. Now listen, एक ही बचता है, point number 5. Same point है, substantial interest. Okay? Let me check the direction. Now listen. Mr. A. Okay. Let's assume Mrs. A not possessing any qualification. Not possessing any qualification. This point I'll discuss and rest everything is done. Not possessing any qualification. So what will happen? Mrs. A का income should be clubbed to Mr. A. Correct? But what I told you, अगर A का इंटरेस्ट, आई एम टेकिंग द सेम एग्जांपल, X लिमिटेड में काम कर रही है. ओके, अगर A का इंटरेस्ट X लिमिटेड में 10% है, कैनॉट बी क्लब. 12% है, कैनॉट बी क्लब. 15% है, कैनॉट बी क्लब. 19% है, कैनॉट बी क्लब. बट 21% है. Can I say it will be clubbed? Because substantial interest substantial interest का criteria is 20%. Okay, got it? Now guys listen, a very important point related to substantial interest and the last point. देखो, say for example, Mr. A का substantial interest is 12%. Mr. A is holding 12% shares of X Limited, where her wife is working and she doesn't have any professional or technical qualification. Mr. A is holding 12% shares where Mrs. A is working in that company and she doesn't have any substantial interest. Abhi dekho, because this is less than 12%, clubbing provision will not apply. Now listen what the law says. The spouse, in this case, is Mr. A. If the substantial interest of Mr. A, understand this, if the substantial interest of Mr. A along with his relatives, I'll tell you the definition of relatives, along with the relatives is 20% plus, then in that case also clubbing provision will apply. That means अगर Mr. A का 12% है, he has a brother जिसका 15% है, तो कितना हो गया 27%. That means substantial interest है, क्लब होगा. अगर ये नहीं होता तो क्लब नहीं होता, बट ब्रदर के साथ 27%. देन मिस्टर ए की सिस्टर है 15%, 12 प्लस 15 हो गया 27. यस, क्लब होगा. मिस्टर ए के फादर है, मिस्टर ए की मदर है, दोनों का मिला के 20% प्लस होगा. नाउ सपोज द सिस्टर और से ब्रदर का शेयर इज 7%, 12 प्लस 7 कितना हुआ 19, 20 के नीचे क्लब नहीं होगा. सो द प्रोविजन इज नॉट ओनली the spouse but along with spouse का relative. Now listen ना, when you are deciding Mrs. A की सैलरी Mr. A में क्लब होगी, तो यहाँ पे रिलेटिव में Mr. A ही देखना है, Mr. A के रिलेटिव देखना है. And see what is the definition of relative उसमें दिया हुआ है. It includes father, mother, wife, brother, sister, or any lineal ascendant or descendant. That means अगर मेरी वाइफ की इनकम मुझे में क्लब हो रही है, तो माई शेयर अलॉन्ग विथ माई ब्रदर, सिस्टर, माई फादर, माई मदर, माई किड विल बी ट्रीटेड. माई वाइफ्स फादर, FIL, फादर इन लॉ, doesn't come under definition of relative. MIL, mother in law, doesn't come under the definition of relative. So relative means father, mother, wife, son, daughter, grandfather, grandmother. बट रिलेटिव में इन-लॉज नहीं आता है. वाइफ का ब्रदर, वाइफ की मदर, वाइफ के फादर, वाइफ की सिस्टर, कोई नहीं आएगा. इवन फॉर अ पर्सन, डॉटर इन लॉ doesn't come under the definition of relative. Bahu, saas doesn't come under the definition of relative. Father, mother, brother, sister, grandfather, grandmother, or lineal ascendant or descendant. Great grandfather, great grandmother भी आ गया. So 20% ये नहीं है कि खाली मिस्टर ए का होना चाहिए. अगर ए का लेस देन 20% है, क्लब नहीं होगा. बट अगर मिस्टर ए के साथ उसके फादर, मदर, सन, सिस्टर, ब्रदर का भी शेयर है और दोनों का शेयर मिला के इट इज गोइंग अबाउट 20%, क्लबिंग प्रोविजन. मिसेस ए की सैलरी इसमें क्लब करनी है तो मिस्टर ए के रिलेटिव देखते हैं. अगर मिस्टर ए की सैलरी मिसेस ए में क्लब करनी है तो मिसेस ए के रिलेटिव देखते हैं. तो व्हेन आई से मिसेस ए के रिलेटिव, उसके फादर, मदर, ब्रदर, सिस्टर आएंगे. मिसेस ए के रिलेटिव में मिस्टर ए का डैड नहीं आएगा बिकॉज वो फादर इन लॉ हो गया. मिसेस ए के रिलेटिव में मिस्टर ए की मदर नहीं आएगी, मदर इन लॉ हो गई। मिसेस ए के रिलेटिव में ए का ब्रदर या ए का सिस्टर नहीं आएगा, ब्रदर इन लॉ सिस्टर इन लॉ हो गए, ननद और भाभी हो गए। दैट डजंट कम अंडर डेफिनेशन ऑफ रिलेटिव अंडर दिस सेक्शन। इनकम टैक्स में देयर आर डिफरेंट डेफिनेशंस ऑफ रिलेटिव इन डिफरेंट सेक्शंस। हर एक का डिफरेंस अलग है। एज फार एज दिस चैप्टर इज कंसर्न एंड एंटायर सिलेबस में दिस इज द ओनली चैप्टर वेयर यू हैव टू रिमेंबर रिलेटिव। This is the definition. So I'll repeat, 20% share of Mr. A, or if it is less than 20% along with his relatives. So Mrs. A के केस में अगर सैलरी मिस्टर ए में क्लब हो रही है तो मिस्टर ए एंड उसके रिलेटिव्स, फादर, मदर, डॉटर, डॉटर में दोनों की डॉटर एक ही है, सिस्टर, ब्रदर, all that comes. In-laws doesn't come into picture. Keep that. Alright guys, so these were the basic provision. Don't worry, you have to understand 70%, 60% भी समझ में आ गया. When I do the sums, you will find it very simple. अभी देखो कि जो भी पॉइंट्स मैंने डिस्कस किया ना, सब ये पॉइंट नंबर 6 में कवर हो गया. सो जो फर्स्ट पेज पे है हेडिंग रेम्यूनरेशन ऑफ स्पाउस 6413.1 से लेके 0.6, एवरीथिंग आई एक्सप्लेन यू. कीप इन माइंड और ये मार्क करो इम्पोर्टेंट, बिकॉज नॉट ओनली फ्रॉम द सम्स पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू but also from practical theory point of view. You will be getting 7 or 8 mark long answers or maybe 5 mark short note that will come. Got it guys? So this is the concept of clubbing of income. Concept matlab this is concept of clubbing of with only discussion of the first part. Now what I'll be doing ना guys, थोड़ा video lengthy हो गया because अगर मैं sum करूँगा time जाएगा, so I'm restricting the video to till here only. That is explanation covering basic concept of clubbing of income, what exactly clubbing was, and detailed explanation of the first part, that is remuneration of spouse. Detailed explanation of the first part, that is remuneration of spouse. Getting it? I'll repeat again. Remuneration means salary, commission, bonus or similar form. When a husband is working in the firm where wife has got some substantial interest and he doesn't have any professional technical qualification, clubbing will apply. If you are having a technical or a professional qualification which suits your profile of work, then in that case clubbing provision will not apply. As I told you, there is no legal definition of technical or professional qualification. It would depend upon individual situation and what profile you have. I give you example. CA अगर engineer का काम करता है, doesn't make sense. If you are an illiterate person and you show that you are working in accounts department, it doesn't come under criteria of अपना clubbing income के criteria में नहीं आता है. Got it? And as I told you, the points of substantial interest more than 20%. If it is in a company, shares of more than 20%. If you are a sole trader, single person, then 100% substantial interest. Getting it now? If I am having my own company now, Ashish Tutorials is my proprietary concern, 100% profit mera hai. If my wife works with me and she doesn't have any professional qualification, then uska income mere mein hi club hoga, because I am the 100% owner, so 100% substantial interest. Got it guys? And don't forget 20% with the relative. That means अगर तुम्हारा खुद का 10, 12, 15% है, but relative का add करने के बाद it goes above 20, then in that case also clubbing provisions apply. And don't forget, on the day of accrual of income, legal marriage should exist. Relationship has to be of husband and wife. No divorce, no live-in relationship. Engagement हुआ नहीं चलेगा, divorce हुआ नहीं चलेगा, girlfriend boyfriend नहीं चलेगा. Even if your parents, both the parents have approved your wedding, till the time you don't get legally married, clubbing provisions will not apply. Keep this in mind. Okay guys, as I told you, I'll wind up here because the first sum what I'm going to take now, उसमें there are 6 parts, तो थोड़ा video lengthy हो जाएगा. So I'll wind up the video here. Before you all see the next video where I'll be starting the sums, at least 2 more videos will go for this first part, remuneration. Before we meet in the next class, please एक बार ये explanation वापस देख लेना, because if you have got this, I'm sure if you have understood this ना, समझो next 2 क्लास में जो पढ़ाने वाला हूँ ना, तुम्हारा 90% हो गया. You have to just see how you have to present the solution in the exam और कैसे लिखना है. And as I told you, हर एक sum में I have already given the answers, so your job becomes very simple. That's it, guys. I wind up here. Please revise whatever I have done this session so that next class becomes very, very simple for you. In the next class, I'll be taking sums on remuneration. At least 2 classes more will go in this, maybe third one also, but 2 to pakka hai to do sums on remuneration. That's it, guys. See you all in the next class. Till then, take care, guys.